driver of the AMS/Prime Cuts Drag Huracan, currently the quickest Huracan in the world. Power-wise, I'm a bit of a masochist, so like when you do something like this and it's never been done before, that's more interesting to me. So some of it is a thrill of the chase. If you were in Vegas one night trying to have a really good time and rented a Huracan, you may have had a great night in this car. We found basically the worst Huracan in the world that was priced right. Years ago, there was a show on Netflix called Hyperdrive. They sold it to us as Ninja Warrior for cars, and they wanted an exotic. Martin from AMS, we were just starting to dip our toes into twin-turboing these cars, and he figured it'd be good exposure for the brand. So we get into this production. It was great. We learned a lot. At the end of the show, what are we going to do with this thing now? And AMS has their core competency is twin-turbo, all-wheel drive, DCT drag racing. You know, think back to the GTR days. They were Alpha Omega. It was an iconic car. They had the first GTR in the 6s. So he said, what the hell? Let's give drag racing a crack. And here we are. I'm sure there's original videos of our passes. We'd pull 3-4 wheelies, bouncing. And originally, when we had bias plies on the steering axle and the rear axle, and it was an all-wheel drive car, the car was a bit of a death trap on the factory suspension because the tire is this big undamped spring, and you have suspension that's supposed to control a 20-inch wheel with a rubber band on it, and it may as, the dampers may as well have been a 2x4, and the car would just swap weight. I'm usually not too scared, and that was scary. We went back to the drawing boards. We came up with a coilover package with our friends at JRZ that really did tame the car back down. It was an appropriate spring rate, an appropriate damping rate, and we started getting faster and faster, but the wheelie problem never really went away. We could never get the short track we wanted without just pulling the front. So we ended up working with Motec, and we actually use a ride height sensor on the front. Essentially, we don't have traction issues off the line. Like with GTRs, typically like an R35, you get as greedy as you can with pouring power off the launch, and you kind of just run through the wheel spin. This car, you're going to break stuff if you do that because there's so much weight over the rear axle with the motor and the transaxle that you have more traction than the chassis has an ability to resist a wheelie. Currently, we're running a sleeve block. There's some secret sauce in there to keep it together that AMS has come up with. It's been putting up pretty admirably with the high side of 27 to 2,800 horsepower over multiple hits this weekend. Again, we're kind of forging ahead, charting new territory. Just like with my other car for the DCT Street, we kind of found the limits of the stock cylinder liners on a car that's owned by somebody who understands what we're risking. So that way, by the time it filters down to something that you were willing to sell it to a distributor or a dealer, it's pretty well figured out, and we're not just saying, here you go, Wile E. Coyote, here's your roller skates with rockets attached to them, have fun. And we're finding out how much we can get away with while staying on the correct side of reliability. And we ended up taking the record from UGR, and eventually they came back and they got it, and they'd held it up until this weekend. I think it was a 724, maybe at 213. We did a few hits. We got the 8th mile on the short track dialed in. We learned a few things, and then we decided to put the beans to it. And you get the time slip, it's like, oh, 705. Wow, that's a lot quicker than we thought it was going to go. And so at that point, we're like, 6s are in the conversation now. They're in the conversation, not guaranteed. If this car is going to be a 6-second car, it's not going to be like a 670s car or a 680s car. It's going to be a 698 with perfect conditions and the stars aligning and everything working perfectly. And we've made some more passes. We're really swinging for the fences. Thank God the car's been holding together. And we've gone as low as a 704, I believe, at 208 miles an hour. The car's very heavy though. It's close to 4,000 pounds with me in it. It's just the nature of this chassis, having unlimited traction essentially and all the weight over the rear axle. As we make enough power, we can take that car at any speed, probably below about 180 miles an hour and just lift the front. So we have to be very judicious with how we apply power. And after that, it's how much power can we run out in 5th gear. But the problem is you're already going, we're going what, I think 166 to the 8th. When we finally do set the fronts down because, we're out of power, okay, fine, we're going 175 miles an hour and we're 400 feet from the finish line. So how much are you really going to gain in ET, elapsed time, by doing that? And so we ended up going to a skinny up front and deleting the all-wheel drive. We didn't save any weight because we took that weight and we moved it further forward. And then we actually tried going to a radial also. It's not very often you see skinnies on a Lambo. A lot of people, they question the setup we're running right now, and clearly this setup has yielded the best ETs for us. And the radial, it worked okay. The car was definitely more stable and more easy to drive. When you're launching a DCT trans and you don't have a torque converter to soak up a huge RPM differential, it just tended to want to wheel hop when you were really nailing it for a good 60 foot. So we ended up going back to a bias ply, and it's a bit more of a handful to drive. We're willing to put up with that, but in the meantime, it's going really quick. I mean, I think our best 60 foot was a 121. That is a solid 0.04 of a second improvement, which doesn't sound like much, but on a 60 foot, when you're counting those incrementals up to an 1/8 mile, it really does matter. And the car just puts power down much better everywhere. So we're essentially riding a controlled wheelie and trying to keep just a little bit of the front tire on the ground, well past the 8th. 5th gear, maybe we're out of cylinder pressure. We can't keep the front wheels up. It's holding together, and we put up some times we didn't think it was capable of. It's not very often you can go from a gearbox that's unknown and there's like one guy in the world putting these together to, okay, we're putting 2,700 horsepower through a gearbox through the weekend, a DCT, production-based gearbox, and it's holding up. Like, that's damn impressive. AMS built the motor, they built the trans with Dodson parts, Garrett supplied us turbos, we're running 1 ethanol. Like, it's a little crazy what you can do with something so closely related to a street car. This car weighs more than a factory Huracan does, which is a fun fact. People in the YouTube videos, they see the fact that the A-pillar is uncovered and there's no panel there. Well, the reason it's not there is because we have a cage there, and I enjoy living as much as the next guy, and you know, sorry, some of that stuff doesn't fit in. We saved a whopping 28 pounds in interior panels. The cage weighed more than that, and there's my body weight in ballast in the car, so you know, say what you want to about it. If you want to follow the history and where this car is going, obviously AMS Performance, everybody knows who they are. You can also follow it on my Instagram page. I'm at DriveWire. It's a one-stop shop. Everything's integrated, and it's amazing when there's a problem encountered, how quickly they can pull together and come up with a solution. I don't think there's a better team in the industry.